They've told you a story your entire life, that the pyramids were tombs, grand burial sites crafted to honor the dead kings of an ancient world. That tale, neatly wrapped in textbooks and echoed through documentaries, has been repeated so often, it's become gospel. But what if it's not true? What if the pyramids, from the arid plains of Egypt to the misty mountains of China, from the jungles of Central America to the desert sands of Sudan, were never about death at all? What if they were never meant to be tombs, but tools? Living instruments designed not for corpses, but for consciousness. This isn't just speculation. It's a pattern that spans continents, cultures, and centuries. Massive structures with astonishing similarities, built by civilizations who, according to our history books, never knew each other. All following the same architectural logic, all drawn toward one shape, the pyramid. Why this design? Why this enduring form? It appears again and again, unshaken by time, untouched by coincidence. The official narrative tells us these were monuments to power or divine kingship, but that explanation barely scratches the surface. It doesn't explain the precision, the mathematics, the astronomical alignments encoded into the very stones. Let's take the Great Pyramid of Giza, a structure so mathematically advanced and so precisely constructed, it defies the tools and techniques supposedly available at the time of its construction. Rising nearly 500 feet into the air and composed of more than 2 million limestone blocks, each weighing tons, it aligns with true north more precisely than most modern buildings. The angle of its sides, 51.84 degrees, isn't just a random slope. It encodes the golden ratio. The relationship between the base and the height reveals pi. This is not guesswork. These are embedded constants of the universe, known to us now only through advanced mathematics. We're asked to believe that this was achieved with copper chisels and ropes, by slave labor hauling stones over desert sands. But the deeper you look, the less that story holds. Because this isn't just about moving heavy rocks, it's about aligning those rocks with cosmic principles, crafting them into a shape that resonates not only with the earth, but with something far beyond it. The ancients weren't building tombs. They were constructing temples of transformation. Egypt, in particular, was a land not just of kings and conquest, but of initiation. It was a culture that saw the material and the spiritual not as separate, but as reflections of one another. And in this worldview, the pyramid was not a grave. It was a gateway. Think about the so-called King's Chamber inside the Great Pyramid. No hieroglyphs adorn its walls. No treasure has ever been found within. No mummy has ever rested in its granite sarcophagus. What does that tell us? If this was truly a tomb, why is it devoid of any funerary decoration? Why the absence of ritual artifacts? The only thing that chamber contains is silence, symmetry, and a resonance that can still be felt today. This was not a place of mourning. It was a place of awakening. Those granite walls aren't just there for structural support. They hum. They sing. When struck or spoken into, they resonate at specific frequencies. And those frequencies, particularly the famous 111 Hz tone found within the chamber, have been shown to induce states of deep meditation, altered awareness, and even spiritual euphoria. This chamber was a sonic device, a frequency generator. And those who lay in its center weren't preparing for death. They were preparing to meet life in its fullest, most transcendent form. In ancient Egypt, initiation wasn't about status. It was about readiness. To be allowed inside the pyramid was to be recognized as someone prepared to undergo a profound transformation, a death of the ego, a surrender of identity, and a rebirth into something higher. These initiates didn't visit the pyramid as tourists or spectators. They entered as seekers, and what they experienced inside those walls wasn't symbolic. It was real. It was vibrational. It was cosmic. Because the pyramid is more than a building. It's a map, a device, a teacher. Its geometry encodes universal truths. Its design mirrors the cosmos. The shafts in the Great Pyramid aren't ventilation ducts. They point to specific stars, Orion's belt and Sirius, both deeply woven into the Egyptian myths of death, rebirth, and ascension. Osiris and Isis, the resurrection, the return. These weren't poetic allegories. They were scientific truths, expressed through myth so that they could be remembered long after the equations were lost. And this isn't just about Egypt. This same theme repeats around the world. The stepped pyramids of Teotihuacan in Mexico, the underground pyramids hidden in the jungles of Cambodia, the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun, dismissed by mainstream archaeologists but studied by researchers who found intricate tunnels and measurable energy fields. The stories are similar, the alignments consistent. Why? Because this knowledge wasn't regional, it was universal. The pyramid is the language of the earth, a sacred geometry that speaks not in words, but in frequencies. It's a shape that harmonizes energy, captures it, focuses it, and redirects it, just like an antenna. Its base gathers, its apex releases. It is the perfect intermediary between ground and sky, between body and spirit, between the self and the all. You can see this echoed in spiritual systems across the globe. The yogic concept of prana, the Chinese idea of qi, the orgone energy proposed by Wilhelm Reich, each one referring to the same invisible current that animates life. And across time, pyramids have been used to enhance, focus, and tune that energy. Even in the modern era, experiments with pyramid-shaped structures have produced bizarre, often dismissed results. Food decays slower. Razor blades sharpen themselves. People meditate more deeply. Water inside becomes structured. The shape itself seems to organize reality around it. This isn't fantasy, it's resonance, coherence. Physics that mainstream science hasn't yet caught up with. Not because the evidence isn't there, but because the implications are too disruptive. Because if the pyramid is more than a monument, if it is in fact a technology, then everything we've been told about ancient civilization begins to unravel. We're no longer talking about primitive people stacking stones. We're talking about cultures that understood frequency, geometry, consciousness. Who knew how to interface with the energy systems of the planet and possibly the stars? The Russian scientist Alexander Golod built massive fiberglass pyramids across Russia in the 1990s to study their effects. The results were astonishing. Plants grew faster. Disease resistance improved. Water was purified. Even atmospheric anomalies were reported. Yet these findings, compelling as they were brushed aside. Too fringe, too uncomfortable. Because science, like religion, has its dogmas. But the pyramid doesn't need permission to exist. It stands as it always has, silent, still, and powerfully present. It doesn't argue. It doesn't convince. It simply is. And for those who feel the call, for those who approach not with skepticism, but with sincerity, it still works. It still activates. It still aligns. To stand near a pyramid is to feel something shift. Your breath changes. Your thoughts slow. There is a field around it, not unlike the field of a living being. Because in many ways, that's what it is. A living structure, designed to harmonize with the Earth's energy and amplify human consciousness. A machine, yes, but one built for the soul. We often say that the ancients were more connected to nature, more spiritual, more intuitive. But what if they were also more advanced, just in ways that modern science can't quantify? What if their spirituality was their science? What if their temples were functional tools for evolving consciousness? This is why the pyramid matters. Not because it's old, or grand, or mysterious, but because it reminds us of something we've forgotten. That awakening is a process. That evolution isn't just biological, it's energetic, emotional, spiritual. And that hidden within the structure of these ancient monuments is a template for how to remember, how to align, how to ascend. This presence isn't a demon or an enemy. It's something far more personal. It is the accumulated weight of everything you've denied within yourself, the fears you've avoided, the pain you've suppressed, the anger you've rationalized away, the desires you've deemed unacceptable. These fragments of the psyche, hidden in the shadows of awareness, form a kind of psychic gravity that pulls the soul back into unconscious patterns just as it begins to ascend. The destructor is not a punishment. It is a necessary gatekeeper. Because nothing false can pass into truth. Every part of you must be seen, known, and integrated. No aspect of your being can be left behind on the path to wholeness. Not the pain, not the shame, not even the rage. These are not obstacles to awakening. They are the raw material of transformation. Blavatsky echoes the ancient wisdom that true spiritual strength is not about suppressing the shadow, but befriending it. You must confront this inner adversary not with judgment, but with radical compassion. You must gaze into the parts of yourself you've spent lifetimes avoiding and say, "I see you. I understand why you exist. Let's come home." This process requires what the text calls the child state, a return to the original innocence not of ignorance, but of openness. It's not about becoming naive, it's about becoming whole. In this state, the mind is no longer segmented by shame or defense. The soul is no longer fragmented. You are one being again, undivided. This, Blavatsky says, is the birth of the diamond soul. Not a soul free of pain, but a soul made unbreakable because nothing within it is denied. Like a diamond, it has endured immense pressure and emerged with clarity and strength. The light now passes through it without distortion. The teachings here are revolutionary because they don't present perfection as purity. Instead, perfection is presented as integration. The more of yourself you're willing to bring into the light, the more powerful and luminous your consciousness becomes. Your wounds don't disqualify you from awakening. They are the path to it. Every fear, when faced fully, transmutes into courage. Every suppressed emotion, when honored, becomes a source of strength. Even the ego, when understood, becomes a servant rather than a tyrant. This is spiritual alchemy, not escaping life, but transforming within it. This is where the voice of the silence departs most radically from watered-down spirituality. It doesn't promise an easy ascent to bliss. It promises truth, and truth, when lived, demands everything. It demands sincerity. It demands presence. It demands love so vast that even your darkest parts are welcomed into the light. Blavatsky makes clear that transformation is not linear. It spirals. You will meet the destructor again and again, each time in a new disguise, each time revealing a deeper layer of your psyche, waiting for liberation. And each time you walk through that fire with awareness, the diamond becomes more luminous, the thread more radiant. And this transformation is not just personal, it is profoundly collective. Every step you take toward your own liberation expands what is possible for others. You become a tuning fork for truth, a silent transmission of what's possible, a doorway through which others may walk. This is not metaphor. It is metaphysical law. As you awaken, you affect the entire field of consciousness. Your very presence begins to alter the collective vibration. Those near you begin to remember things they didn't know they'd forgotten. Healing begins to happen in ways that logic can't explain. You are no longer just an individual. You have become a channel through which the universe itself speaks. And it speaks through silence, through stillness, through clarity. This is why the voice of the silence is not merely a book. It's an initiation. Reading it is one thing. Living it is another. When you live these truths, when you embody the teachings, you become part of a lineage that stretches back through the ages. A lineage of souls who chose service over escape, integration over avoidance, truth over comfort. And in this lineage, the role of the Bodhisattva is the ultimate embodiment. The Bodhisattva does not walk the path to reach enlightenment for themselves. They walk so others may find the path as well. Even at the threshold of final liberation, they turn back, not out of obligation, but out of realization. There is no true freedom while any being remains in chains. In this way, the Bodhisattva becomes a bridge between worlds, between realms of existence, between the sleeping and the awake. They become a living vow. Not to suffer, but to serve. Not to be seen as saints, but to recognize the divine in every being, even those who've forgotten it in themselves. This vow transforms everything. Suddenly, the smallest act becomes sacred. A word of kindness becomes a spiritual offering. Listening becomes healing. Presence becomes liberation. The Bodhisattva walks through the world not as someone above it, but as someone completely within it, radiating the light of a consciousness that no longer believes in separation. It is here, at this level of being, that the silver thread undergoes its final transformation. What was once a subtle connection now becomes a living current, a luminous highway of energy flowing between the personal self and the universal self. The seeker no longer asks, "Where is the divine?" They know the divine as the very substance of their awareness. The drop of water finally understands that it is not separate from the ocean. It is the ocean, in form, and then even form dissolves. The ray of light recognizes itself as the sun. The illusion of division crumbles, and what remains is oneness, not as a concept, but as reality. Yet this oneness does not erase individuality. It sanctifies it. The soul continues to act in the world, but now as an expression of the whole. The personality becomes the garment through which the self shines. Action becomes effortless because it is no longer driven by personal will, but by divine flow. At this stage, even the concept of a spiritual path begins to fade. You are not on a path anymore. You are the path. You are the silence. You are the voice. And all beings, seen and unseen, are recognized as different faces of the same eternal spirit. Every leaf, every breath, every sorrow, every joy, sacred. This is the final secret of the voice of the silence, that there is no distance between you and the divine. No journey, no time, no separation. Everything you are seeking, you already are. The thread does not lead you somewhere else. It leads you deeper into who you've always been. Blavatsky's teachings, like those of the ancients she drew from, are not meant to impress you. They're meant to awaken you, to rattle you out of complacency, to strip away illusion after illusion, until what's left is the raw, radiant truth of your being. In a time of global upheaval and spiritual amnesia, this message is more important than ever. We are being called not to escape the world, but to participate in its transformation. Not to retreat into personal peace, but to become vessels of clarity and compassion. Not to worship the sacred as something outside of ourselves, but to realize that we are the sacred made visible. So the question is no longer, will I awaken? The question is, will I respond to the call? Will you remember the silver thread? Will you walk the path not for personal gain, but as an offering to life itself? Because the silence is not silent. It is speaking now. It has always been speaking. Beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the identity. It calls you not to become someone else, but to become fully what you are. Not to reach enlightenment someday, but to live as awareness today, right now. And so, if Blavatsky's message resonates, don't just admire it, engage it. Dive into the stillness, meet the destructor, walk the paramitas, serve not from obligation, but from realization. Strengthen the silver thread until it becomes a beam of light that nothing can extinguish. The truth is waiting inside you, not as an idea, but as a presence. A presence that's been patiently waiting for you to turn inward. A presence that knows no separation, no fear, no death. This is the legacy of the voice of the silence, not a doctrine, not a dogma, but a living transmission passed from soul to soul through the ages, a reminder, a guide, a map to your true nature. All you have to do is listen. Truly listen. In the silence, you will hear it. Not with your ears, with your being. The voice speaks not from the outside, but from the depths of your own awareness. It says, "Welcome home." That's what the pyramids are. Not tombs, not trophies, temples of memory, machines of awakening. And now, in a world so loud, so chaotic, so disconnected, they whisper the same message they've always held. Return. Return to stillness, to alignment, to truth. Return to the journey upward, the ascent from matter to mind to spirit. This is the story hidden in stone, waiting for those who are ready not just to read it, but to live it. The truth of the pyramids has never really been lost. It's just been buried, not by time, not even by nature, but by a collective forgetting. A gradual slipping away of knowledge, replaced by convenience, control, and simplified stories that serve power, not truth. But the stones never stopped speaking. The geometry never ceased to resonate. The frequencies never died. And the pull they exert on the soul of those who seek, those who remember, is stronger now than ever. The deeper you go, the more impossible it becomes to accept the official narrative at face value. Because that narrative is full of holes, gaps so wide they could swallow entire belief systems. Why, for instance, do we accept the notion that a structure like the Great Pyramid was built using rudimentary tools and brute force, when we can't even replicate it today with our modern machinery? The level of precision found in the joints between those limestone and granite blocks is mind-bending. Some gaps are so tight you can't even slide a human hair between them. And this precision isn't just aesthetic, it's functional. Every angle, every line, every surface contributes to the harmonic integrity of the space. You're not just standing in a stone room when you enter the king's chamber, you're stepping into an energy field engineered to fine-tune your own. It's architecture as alchemy. The space shapes you just as much as you perceive it. You begin to realize this is no tomb, it's a technology. A frequency machine that works not with wires and circuits, but with resonance, intention, and sacred form. Even the silence inside the chamber isn't truly silent. It hums, subtly, deeply. An inaudible pulse you feel more than hear. You can sense the frequencies bouncing, folding in on themselves, creating standing waves in the air, in your bones, in your very consciousness. It's not an absence of sound. It's a presence of stillness. And within that stillness is a door, one that doesn't open outward, but inward. Many initiates throughout history have described what happens inside these chambers. The visions, the clarity, the out-of-body sensations. They all say the same thing. It's not just a feeling, it's a memory. A reactivation of something ancient and encoded within. The pyramid doesn't show you something new. It reminds you of something eternal. But the Great Pyramid is just the beginning. When you start to trace this knowledge across the globe, the connections multiply. From Machu Picchu to Mohenjo-Daro, from Easter Island to the temples of Angkor Wat, the same principles echo. Alignment, proportion, resonance, transformation. It becomes clear that we're not looking at isolated marvels, but at remnants of a unified understanding. A sacred science of energy and spirit that once spanned the earth. And then you start to wonder, how? How could cultures with oceans between them, separated by millennia and geography, all arrive at the same architectural language, the same celestial alignments, the same sacred math? Historians will say it's coincidence. Convergent evolution. That the pyramid shape is just the most stable form for stacking stones. But is that really the full picture? How many coincidences does it take before a pattern demands a deeper look? The truth is, the ancients weren't guessing. They weren't approximating. They were following blueprints, not blueprints made of paper and ink, but of memory, of vibration, of star knowledge. And that knowledge didn't begin in Egypt or Mesoamerica or anywhere modern historians point. It began in a time before time, a place outside of our linear timeline, a civilization remembered by many names, Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu, but known universally as a time when spirit and science walked hand in hand. According to esoteric traditions, the survivors of that fallen world didn't rebuild in the way we might expect. They didn't try to recreate cities or armies or technologies. They focused on something far more essential: consciousness. They knew that physical structures could crumble, but vibration endures. And so they seeded the earth with reminders, living monuments that would stand the test of time, built not just to survive, but to awaken. The pyramids are those reminders. Look at them as you would a tuning fork, each calibrated to a specific frequency, a unique vibrational signature. Sit within one, even a model, and you begin to feel your own energy sync up. Your mind slows, your breath deepens, your awareness expands. This isn't suggestion, it's entrainment. Just like two tuning forks will eventually match pitch when placed near each other, your own electromagnetic field aligns with the geometry around you. And if that geometry is designed with sacred proportions, you begin to resonate in harmony, not just with the earth, but with the stars. This was the core understanding of the ancients: as above, so below. That what happens in the macrocosm is mirrored in the microcosm. That the stars are not just far-off lights, but energetic keys woven into the structure of your own being. The shafts in the Great Pyramid that point to Orion and Sirius weren't decorative. They were functional. Celestial frequencies, streaming in, aligning with the human spirit. And this knowledge didn't stay locked away in the past. It lives on in the mystical traditions passed quietly through the ages. Hermeticism, alchemy, Kabbalah, Tantra. These systems all speak of transmutation, of spiritual ascent, of activating the light body, the vehicle through which consciousness moves beyond the flesh. And who, again and again, appears at the center of these traditions? Thoth, Hermes, the scribe, the teacher, the architect of ascension. He's not remembered because he was worshipped. He's remembered because he was known, because his teachings resonated across cultures and languages, passed not through force, but through frequency. And his message was always the same: you are more than you think. You are not your body. You are not your name. You are vibration. You are consciousness. You are divine. He taught that the body was a vessel, that the mind was a bridge, that the soul was eternal. He spoke of the laws of vibration, of polarity, of rhythm and cause and effect. These weren't mystical riddles. They were blueprints, guidelines for how to live, how to evolve, how to align with the source of all things. And the pyramid, especially the one at Giza, was his masterwork. A library of vibration, a cathedral of resonance, a device that could open the inner eye, unlock the dormant codes of the soul, and initiate the seeker into a new octave of being. Many believe there is a hall of records beneath the Sphinx, a chamber filled not with scrolls or gold, but with vibrational imprints, memories stored in light, encoded in frequency. Perhaps it exists physically. Perhaps it exists only within. But the point remains, the knowledge is there, waiting, hidden, not by secrecy, but by frequency. Because here's the truth, you can't access high-level information if you're vibrating at a low level. The pyramid wasn't built to impress. It was built to test, to protect, to ensure that only those with the right resonance could unlock its deeper meanings. This is why modern researchers struggle. They come with tape measures and theories, with ego and credentials, but not with alignment, not with intention, not with purity of heart. And so the pyramid remains silent, because it doesn't respond to force, it responds to frequency. It's the same reason so many spiritual seekers today are feeling called, not to churches or temples, but to these ancient structures. Something in their geometry awakens something dormant within. A code, a memory, a path. We are living in a time of reactivation, of remembering, and the pyramids are playing their part. Quietly, patiently, they wait, anchoring the grid, holding the frequency, whispering to those who are ready, come back. The door is still open. Because what they offer is more than knowledge, it's transformation, not as a theory, as a lived experience. One that isn't taught in schools or measured in labs, but felt in the bones, in the breath, in the stillness of sacred space. You don't need to travel across the world to feel this. You don't need credentials or lineage or anyone's permission. You only need presence, willingness, a return to your own center. Because the pyramid isn't just an external structure. It's a map of your inner architecture. Your base, the body, your sides, thought, emotion, breath, and your apex, consciousness. The pyramid teaches you not what to think, but how to align. It doesn't give answers. It tunes you to the place where answers arrive on their own, not from outside, but from within. And that's the most powerful technology of all. What if everything we've believed about ancient history has been upside down? What if what we call primitive was in fact profound? What if the greatest structures ever built weren't signs of archaic superstition, but of advanced spiritual science, one we've only just begun to reawaken to? The official story is comfortable. It fits neatly in textbooks and standardized curriculum. It tells us the pyramids were tombs for kings, grand ego projects built with sweat and stone, using basic tools and an excess of manpower. But this version of history doesn't satisfy those who feel, those who intuit, those who sense the subtle hum of deeper truth just beneath the surface of these silent, staring structures. Because these pyramids, standing tall and timeless, are not just relics, they're reminders. They remind us of what we used to know, that the universe is not a cold, random machine, but a field of frequency, a dance of intelligence, of order and intention. That consciousness is not confined to the brain, but a spectrum that can be elevated, stretched, and tuned, And that spiritual awakening isn't a modern phenomenon, but an ancient science, a discipline carved into stone and geometry long before our current cycle of history began. The deeper truth of the pyramids is not that they hold secrets, it's that we've forgotten how to hear them. They were never meant to be interpreted through dusty historical timelines. They were designed to be felt, experienced, lived. And perhaps that's why they still stand, unmoved by war, weather, or empire. Their purpose is not preservation, it's provocation. They exist to awaken, and if you're feeling drawn to them, even from thousands of miles away, it's because something inside you is being stirred. We live in an era where distraction is everywhere. The noise is constant. We're pulled in 100 directions every moment. Scrolling, consuming, reacting. The modern world doesn't want you still. It doesn't want you aware. It wants you numbed, entertained, busy. But the pyramid, silent and still, stands in total defiance of that chaos. It reminds you, stillness is power. Presence is truth. Awareness is everything. When you sit in meditation under a pyramid, or even a simple model shaped in its image, you begin to notice something subtle but profound. Your thoughts slow. Your breath deepens. There's a clarity that arises, not forced, but natural. It's not about belief. It's not about ritual. It's physics. It's resonance. You're not imagining the shift. You're feeling the effects of sacred geometry in action. The pyramid isn't just a shape. It's a field generator. Its angles and proportions create harmony in the space around it. And if you enter that space with openness, it harmonizes you. Why do so many ancient traditions speak of triangles, trinity, and pyramidal forms? Because these are not symbols. They're structures of consciousness. The triangle represents the union of opposites, base and apex, earth and sky, matter and spirit, the balance between physical existence and divine potential. And the pyramid, with its square base and pointed tip, mirrors the very journey of spiritual ascent, the return from the many to the one. This is why you feel something when you see a pyramid, not because it's impressive or ancient, but because your soul recognizes the blueprint. It's encoded in you, in your cells, in your energy field. You don't just see it, you remember it. That's the real reason pyramids exist all over the world, because this was never about isolated cultures figuring things out independently. It was about a shared memory, a global network of knowledge seated deep within the human experience. Not passed through books or teachers, but through resonance, through geometry, through the soul's own ancient knowing. And that knowing is waking up. We're entering a time on this planet where more and more people are beginning to ask the right questions, not just about the pyramids, but about themselves. Who am I really? Why am I here? What have I forgotten? The pyramid doesn't answer those questions with words. It answers through experience, through energy, through silent invitation. Because here's the truth. You don't need to fly to Giza to activate this. You don't need credentials or permission. You only need intention. Create a quiet space. Build a small pyramid. Sit beneath it. Breathe. Allow. What begins as a curiosity may soon become a calling, a remembering, a realignment. The pyramid, in this way, becomes not just a structure, but a mirror. Not just a tool, but a teacher. And it teaches one lesson above all. You are the technology. All the ancient monuments, all the mystery schools, all the sacred texts, they weren't pointing to gods outside of us. They were pointing to the divine within. The pyramid reflects that truth back to you with unflinching clarity. That you are not a random accident of biology. You are consciousness in form. You are the apex and the base, the journey and the destination, the seeker and the light. When you begin to walk this path, the pyramid becomes more than stone. It becomes symbol, blueprint, prophecy, and its message is clear. Awaken, align, ascend. This is not about spiritual escapism. It's not about retreating from the world or floating off into fantasy. It's about grounding your awareness so deeply in the truth of who you are that you can navigate this reality with clarity, with compassion, with power. The ancients didn't just build pyramids, they lived them. Their lives were structured around alignment with the stars, with the earth, with the rhythms of the cosmos. They didn't separate science from spirituality. To them, it was all the same, different languages for the same truth. And now we're being invited to return to that understanding. But this time, we're not just remembering for ourselves. We're remembering for the world. Because the world is in need, not of more information, but of more integration. Not of more tech, but of more truth. And truth, real truth, isn't something you argue, it's something you become. So what does this mean for you? It means the journey is internal. It means you are the initiate. The pyramid is not a relic of the past. It's a model for your present, for your evolution, for your expansion. Each breath you take with intention is a step up that sacred slope. Each moment of stillness is a chamber entered. Each thought aligned with love, with harmony, with universal truth. That is your activation. You are building your inner pyramid with every conscious choice you make. And yes, this takes work, discipline, presence. The ancients knew this. That's why not everyone was allowed inside the pyramid. It wasn't elitism, it was readiness. They understood that spiritual power without emotional maturity is dangerous, that alignment requires purification, that truth requires surrender. But the door is open, always, waiting. You can step into this path right now, not through belief, but through action. Create resonance in your life, declutter your space, cleanse your mind, listen to the silence between your thoughts, harmonize your body through movement, breath, sound. Let the pyramid be your guide, not as an object, but as a practice. Because it is a practice. Alignment is a process, not a destination. Awakening doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds like a spiral staircase inside your being. Layer by layer, step by step. And the pyramid shows us the way. Its structure teaches patience. Its symmetry teaches balance. Its enduring presence teaches trust. The world may mock what it doesn't understand. The institutions may dismiss what they can't measure. But the pyramid doesn't need validation. It was built before opinions mattered, and it will remain long after they fade. It wasn't built to be popular. It was built to be eternal. And maybe that's the lesson we need now more than ever, that what's real doesn't beg to be believed. It simply is. And the closer you move toward it, the more you feel it in your bones, in your breath, in your being. That's how you know it's true. You've made it this far. You've walked through the dust of broken narratives, through the noise of a world that's forgotten its soul, and you've arrived at a deeper place, a quieter place. One that doesn't ask for belief, only awareness. And in that awareness, you begin to remember. This isn't new. You've been here before. Not just in lifetimes past, but in states of being, in dreams, in knowing, in the pulse of silence that lives beneath the chaos. The pyramid reminds us that spiritual awakening is not about adding more. It's about removing what isn't true. It's about returning to what's always been. frequency, geometry, light. So let this be your invitation, not to idolize the past, but to embody the wisdom it preserved, to walk as the ancients walked, not in sandals across stone, but in spirit, through consciousness, aware, aligned, awake. The pyramid is not finished. It never was. It completes itself in you. You are the final stone, the living apex, the vessel through which this truth walks again in the world. And maybe, just maybe, that's why you're here. Not by accident, not by chance, but because something inside you knew that the time of remembering had come, that the age of awakening had returned, and that your soul was ready, not just to observe history, but to become it. So rise,